Welcome to another edition of Coexist. My name is Co Lewis, and I'm your host on IQ Podcasts. And the reason that I started this show, I am a co-founder of an anti-poaching foundation in Zambia, and conservation is what I live and breathe. And being in media for 30 plus years, I realized there are a lot of organizations out there that I was not aware of. And having a foundation, I realized that there are a lot of great people and a lot of great organizations that really need to be, in the public eye. People need to learn about the amazing work going on. And I'm so excited because it's taken a while, but we finally got it dialed in. And my special guest is Kelly Sorenson of Ventana Wildlife Society. Kelly, you're finally here. Hallelujah.
Well, thank you for having me, Co.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to speak to you and for a variety of reasons. And I want to thank our friend, Larry Laverty. He's a professional actor and a conservationist, and he and I have developed a friendship through conservation. And we were talking about issues going on around the world. And we were just in a despair over what was happening in our state of California with the wildfires going on. And we said, you know what, we have to get organizations that have been directly impacted by the wildfire. And he said, I think you need to talk to Ventana. And I said, let's do it. So I reached out to you. I'm so glad we got together under difficult circumstances while you're my special guest. And one last note, I don't know if you know this, but the podcast I had prior to you coming on was with a guy named Bill Toon of EcoLife, who happened to be at the very early stages of the California Condor Conservation Project. So I kind of feel like this is the season of the condor, and we're here to bring attention to what's going on, bring attention to your amazing organization. So once again, Kelly Sorenson of Ventana Wildlife Society. You're executive director. You've been executive director since 2003. You're a wildlife biologist. You worked with peregrine falcons, bald eagles, and of course the California condor. So tell us, how did Kelly Sorenson get to here today? Tell me about where your passion for conservation came from, and let's dig into how we can help Ventana with the crisis of the wildfires.
Excellent. That's a couple of great topics. I always like sharing my personal story. I get that question a lot. And I was raised in rural West Virginia. My backyard blended into the backyards of my neighbors. And we really didn't observe fence lines much back then. And you could just sort of roam around all over the countryside. And in doing so, I fell in love with nature. I fell in love with wildlife, and I knew, that there was something growing in me, but I really didn't know what it was. And then one day I was out hiking around, and I saw this red-tailed hawk fly into a nest. And then I took a closer look, and I saw that it was a pair, and they were acting like they were going to reproduce. And I thought, this would be fantastic. I could maybe photograph it and learn some things, and so I got this fascination from this pair of red-tailed hawks. Well, I ended up failing. And that's what drove my desire to learn more, because they failed, because I wondered, well, was it something that I did? Was it something else that's going on in the environment? And it just raised more questions than answers. And I think that's where it all began for me.
And it's funny because I like to find out where that moment in everybody's life, where they connected, be it a particular animal, an event, what inspired and put that fire in them to, do more, to be more productive, to have more impact on the world. And we're a world under assault. So when we have people like Kelly running an amazing organization like Ventana, I feel like there's hope in the world. Like we have a chance to actually, stem the tide of, extinction. We can engage and educate. So you had this passion. So did you go through other organizations? How did you get to Ventana?
Mm-hmm. So this was, as I said, back in West Virginia, and I was entering college in the late 80s, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. At the time, I was working at a hardware store, and I was showing off those photographs that I had taken of that red-tailed hawk pair that I told you about. And this lady came in and oversaw that conversation and the photos and said, well, you need to go and volunteer for the Raptor Rehabilitation Center. And I hadn't heard of it before. Started volunteering there some 5 or 6 years later, and serving on their board and helping them with fundraising and marketing and you name it. That's what gave me my first exposure to nonprofits. And between the two, wildlife and the nonprofit community, it just clicked.
It's amazing. So let me ask you, there are a lot of things we're going to talk about, your role in Ventana, and tell us where exactly Ventana Wildlife Society is located, so anybody who's listening or watching can check you guys out and see what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you. We're in Central California, coastal Central California to be more exact. We're in Monterey County, and we got our start in the Ventana Wilderness. That's where we got the name from. Originally, it was a derivative of Ventana Wilderness. We realized that our focus was on the conservation of wildlife, and we also do a great deal of work with youth and getting youth outdoors. But we changed the name to Ventana Wildlife Society to really honor our main focus, which is wildlife conservation. In Big Sur, California, in the late 80s and into the 90s, some 70 bald eagles were reintroduced to the wild, establishing a robust population of eagles in this region, successfully far exceeding the recovery goals. And that's what led to the invitation for Ventana Wildlife Society to begin a California Condor Recovery effort, also in Big Sur, which we did in 1997 was our first release. So we've been at it for over 20 years. And since then, we've worked with the National Park Service to create a release site at Pinnacles National Park. We also have another release site in San Simeon, California that we operate. And so the effort's been growing, and so has the population of condors too.
I have to ask you, when you are dealing, let's go back to 1972. I lived overseas. I had heard of the Condor Crisis just kind of through word of mouth, but we were down to what, 21, 22 birds? Was that how right. Critical in the world? Okay, the California condor is not a little thing. This is a bird that almost has a 10-foot wingspan, very unusual looking. And what got us to that crisis of how we got so few, and where do we stand number-wise today?
Thank you for asking that question, because that is the bread and butter of our work. The captive breeding programs that we collaborate with do a wonderful job of preparing captive bred condors for release. Our job is to release them and then figure out what's killing them. We need to figure out what those limiting factors are, because as you know, every species is going to have a different set of limiting factors on their population. For the California condor, the biggest from back in the historical population before they were brought in and today, by far, is the ingestion of lead ammunition, which causes lead poisoning. We have documented some well over 70 or 80 different cases of lead poisoning. And we're talking about very low numbers of birds here. Percentage-wise, it's just out the roof. We know it's coming from spent ammunition because we found fragments of bullets and whole bullets inside of the stomach of condors. We watched, direct observation, condors feeding on animals such as ground squirrels that had just been shot with lead bullets. And so, we've nailed this thing down. We know where it's coming from. And this was clearly among the biggest problems in the historic population, and is most certainly the biggest threat today. And we're working very, very hard to address that by actually providing free copper ammunition to hunters and ranchers, because these are our allies. They have the best wildlife habitat out there. They're the ones that have condors flying around on their beautiful landscapes, the ranches, and other beautiful properties in the region, and they're the ones that have the food that these condors need. So we're working with them to invite them to make a switch to copper ammunition at our expense. We've already
amazing, because it's not cheap. That's amazing. I heard $250,000 in ammunition.
That's right. Just since 2012. So we're really committed to it. We feel like we're moving the needle in the right direction. But you're talking about hundreds of years of using lead ammunition, and that's just what the market's used to. That's what's on the shelves. And it's kind of an uphill battle to get enough copper ammunition out there and enough people who are switching to make a difference. But that's where we're at right now. We are convinced if we can succeed on that front, that condors will continue to find sufficient food. They will continue to breed as they already are, and their survivorship will increase to the point where we will no longer be needed. And that's a day that I wake up to every day, and I say, well, I'm one day closer.
Yeah, seriously.
That's what it's all about.
That's how we feel about our foundation at Sophie Wildlife. I keep saying to everybody, I can't wait till you don't need me. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to lose sleep at night wondering how I'm going to raise funds. What's happened to the elephant population near us? What's going on with the lions? I'm right there with you. I hope one day I go out of business in my foundation.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not needed anymore. Bye-bye. You got to go.
Absolutely.
So that's crazy. So again, I'm speaking with Kelly Sorenson of Ventana Wildlife Society, my special guest, which was just by sheer accident that I had another condor, a legend in the condor industry, Bill Toon, on a few weeks ago, talking about his foundation, EcoLife. And here we are with the man who's very important in the condor recovery. So before the fires happened, and we're going to go really into that and what Ventana is going through, how many condors were we up to? I see two different numbers. I saw 410 and then I saw 518. I figured you'd be the man to know.
Yeah, what you're seeing are the 518 is the total population, including all wild populations as well as every condor in captivity, and they're spread out over several different institutions. The 410, I believe you said, that sounds about right, was the end of 2019 wild population. And the wild population includes all of California, Arizona, and Utah, as well as Baja California, Mexico. So currently we have three different populations that are physically separated, and a fourth that's up and coming up in Northern California in collaboration with Redwood National Park and the Yurok tribe. Hopefully releases will begin there for the first time next summer.
That's so exciting. And that was actually done by design, that you had these separate populations, because back in 1987, all the wild condor were put in captivity to save them. I mean, it wasn't a guaranteed fact that they could actually pull this off and save the species. I mean, it was a real gamble. So in 1987, they were declared extinct in the wild. They were in captivity, but the condor just doesn't crank out babies like all the time. I read that they reproduce every other year. They don't start mating to age 6 or having chicks, or it's a slow process. Kind of reminds me of elephants. The gestation period is almost 2 years. It's not like you can get one like every week. It's a slow process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And elephants are very long-lived, and similar to condors. A lot of people they think because they reproduce so slowly, that's somehow the reason why their numbers are so low, and that's just not it at all, because it's all about the rate at which they're dying. That's really what it boils down to. The condor population in the 80s, when they were brought in and extinct in the wild, they were dying on average of 25% per year. So you had a 75% chance of surviving from one year to the next. Well, if you run the math on that, the life expectancy was about 6 years of age. Well, they don't even begin to breed until 6 years of age. So they literally weren't able to replenish themselves because the death rate was so high. And I'm sure you've seen that in elephants. Unfortunately, just recently there was that episode where we had a massive die-off. I mean, those kind of events are just really horrific from a population level perspective.
Yeah. In conservation, when you have less than 300,000 elephants and you have more than 400, I hear maybe up to 700 elephants die off in a very short time, you can't even understand how that impacts the species, because the genetic lines are changing. There's so few animals. Same with rhinos. When you have so few, a lot of times the strong genetics, the strong genes are already gone. They're killed out, because they had the biggest tusk or they had the biggest horn, whatever the reason. So the genetics, it really throws the genetics off, and the strength of the species and the strength of the individual. So I can totally see with a condor, when you have basically 2 handfuls of them left. So it's been a success. Do you work not only just with condors? Do you work with golden eagles? Do you work with bald eagles in the same area, or are you just focused now on the condors?
Well, right now we're primarily focused on condors, but our bald eagle program that I mentioned earlier, we released 70 different individuals that we collected from places like Alaska and Canada, where they were much more numerous, and then brought them down to Central California and released them in this area. And the goal was just 4 breeding pairs. When we stopped counting, we were up to something like 26 breeding pairs of bald eagles in the region. So it was a huge success, and that's what led to the condor work. We work with a whole variety of species, and we do a lot of different surveying and ecological service work across taxonomic groups. But we really are zeroed in on condors right now, because that's what the effort requires. And when we're past the point where the death rate is too high, and we've released sufficient numbers of birds and the population starts to grow on its own, like I said, we'll shift gears and start looking for the next species to focus on.
Sadly, there will be another one in line, because the way our world is going and the just mass extinction that's going on. So let's go to mid-August, August 20th, I believe, and 21st, the Dolan Fire. So the Dolan, as everybody knows, California has been on fire for months now. It's not a seasonal thing anymore. It is a year-round thing. It seems to be getting worse. We're breaking records of acreage burned, loss of life, loss of everything. And you guys were directly impacted by the Dolan Fire. So walk us through what happened during the whole crisis. What did Ventana do to react to it? What happened to your condors? Where do we stand right now? Because that's why you're on, because we want to support you, make sure people know what you're doing, and any support we can get your way, we're going to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we were just on the heels of celebrating 101 condors in Central California. We even, in our annual report had the number, 100 in big giant letters. We're really, really excited to have achieved that that mark, going from 0 in the wild to 101 was definitely something to celebrate. Then, as you mentioned, in August 18th exact, someone apparently is accused of starting the Dolan Fire only a few miles away from the Condor Sanctuary in Big Sur. So there was absolutely no time to react. This was, like I said, mid-August. So by August 20th, the fire was burning through the sanctuary. And because of our ongoing relationship with explore.org, we had a streaming camera operating in 2 different locations. One we call the sanctuary cam, which is a good overview of the sanctuary, and you often see free-flying condors there. We sometimes put food out so that they have a clean food source. We also had a camera inside of a redwood tree that was facing a chick that was being raised in this nest. The chick is named Nico. It's become quite a popular condor because of the explore.org streaming camera, and thousands of people falling in love with this bird, and literally watching it from egg all the way to the point of being kicked out of the nest by a marauding male. But I'll have to get to that here in a minute. When the fire burned through, we were very concerned because of the timing of the fire. It burned through in the middle of the night. And this is a place where the condors have traditionally felt very comfortable and very safe. They've spent the night there many, many times before. This is home base. And I think a lot of these birds were just caught off guard. They didn't understand what was going on. They chose to spend the night in this beautiful canyon, and the fire was just too intense. They don't typically fly at night. And so immediately after the fire burned through, we had 10 free-flying condors that had gone missing. We had no signals, no visuals. A few of them were carrying radio transmitters that we can detect from afar using satellites, and they all were shut down and never to be heard from again. So we were very concerned that the fire took the lives of those birds. One of those was found alive, so that reduced the number to 9 missing. Then we had 5 chicks that were in the line of the fire itself that were still inside of nests. And of course, they don't fly either, and they were quite vulnerable. 2 of them perished in the fire. There's 1 chick per nest, and so 2 of those chicks died. 2 of them actually survived the fire. It burned right through their territory. And Nico, the one on the explore.org camera, being one of them. And then there was a 5th chick that we rescued before the fire got there. So out of 8 chicks being raised in wild nests in Central California this year, 5 were affected by the fire. And as I said, 3 of those had survived, 1 being a rescue.
Well, how did they survive? Like, what was it about their nests that gave them a chance to live versus the others? Was it the location? Was it the kind of nest it was? I'm curious, how did they pull through and the unfortunate 2 other babies not pull through?
I think it really depends on the intensity of the fire when it burns through. And if it's a high up in a tree kind of nest, like in this case, these redwood trees, they have just really, really thick bark. Oftentimes redwood trees can survive wildfire. In the case of Nico, this is a chick that was inside of a cavity approximately 60 feet off the ground. The flames apparently burned up to about 10 feet below the cavity. It must have been a horrendous night, but Nico survived. And it suggests that if the fire burns in the lower part of the forest, not up in the upper, up in the canopy where it gets really intense, then these redwood cavities afford a certain amount of protection.
So the big condors, the ones that were lost, I'm learning about condors. Like I said, I was not, I lived overseas when the condor really came to the forefront of people's minds. So I like to learn and share with our viewers and our listeners. So would, I'm surprised that they didn't fly in the night when they're feeling this intense heat. It was it just completely foreign to them. I mean, are other birds like that they just kind of freeze? Like I would think a bird has the best chance of getting out. What happens here with the condor, do you think?
Well, we do have evidence to suggest that there were other birds there, quite a few more actually, that did escape. And we also have evidence of birds that survived, but were found later with severe burn injuries on their legs, which also suggests they had been there and somehow managed to escape. So what we're talking about is some of the birds just not being as fortunate. The thing is, condors are diurnal, meaning they only fly during the daytime. And it would be extremely rare for them to fly at night. Especially if it was as disorienting as it might have been that night with the smoke and visibility as it was, the strange orange glow, lighting up the sky. You really can't see anything, and I could see how if they didn't try to escape early on and waited too late, how that could be very unfortunate.
Yeah, and you're right, being disoriented, not knowing which end is up, and maybe you've got a baby. Yeah, so many things come into play, and that's one of the tragic things about these fires is when you see the way wildlife react. I mean, they're as scared as we would be. They don't know where to go. They haven't thought it through, and it's tragic. And let me ask you this: are you guys going for? I want everybody in California because I hate fire so much. I almost lost my house in 2003. My best friend lost her house, and I still have PTSD from it. I mean, it literally burned around my house. I still have all the burn marks around my house and the impact it had on me. Are you guys leaning on the California government to make people who start fires, arsonists, get maybe a mandatory 25 years or life? Because this is going to keep happening. When you hear this stuff, do you guys go into the legislative area? Do you have a division of Ventana that says, okay, you know what, we're pushing a boulder uphill if clowns keep setting fires in our area? I mean, it'll undo everything we do all the time. Are you guys in that area?
We're not. First, I really think this is an anomaly. I mean, I think it's very unusual. Even with the changing climate and more fires over time, it is still a bit unusual in the sense that, this is an active release site. Whenever we have young birds around, we always have to make it easy for them because they're just getting established. Well, the reality is the older birds take advantage of that. And so, you've got this unusual situation where you have a high number of condors all in one place, and that combination with a fire started in our backyard is what was so devastating. And I just, I mean, knock on wood, hopefully this doesn't happen again, right? But I think everything else being equal, I would be really surprised if this kind of perfect storm would happen again. And then, over time, when the birds are more scattered across the landscape and we've got multiple different release sites and we're not dependent on one core area as much, that will also alleviate that threat. So at this point, I just don't think that's a priority for us. We need to stay focused on the restoring. We're the only nonprofit in California that's actively releasing and managing condors in the wild. So, that's our core role. That's what the federal government wants us to do, and we're proud to do it.
That's amazing that you have these relationships. You work with governmental agencies and non-governmental agencies, which is amazing because that is a powerful tool, and those are powerful allies to be working with you. I mean, then you can really get stuff done quickly when you've got the government behind you. So were you the guy behind developing those relationships? Because that's amazing. I know you've been executive director since 2003, so I know your handprints all over Ventana, but did they come to you or did you seek them out?
I think the credit is really more owed to the field staff, honestly, because that's where the proof in the pudding is, so to speak. You know, the real results are the number of birds out there in the wild, how efficient we are at getting them out there in the wild. You know, do we offer a cost-effective approach? You know, are we collaborative? Are we helping? Are we moving the needle in the right direction? And you answer yes to all those things, and you realize, you know what, this is a group that we need to help. And I think that's what it was. It took us putting our dues in over a 15-year period or more, and then in the last 5 years, we've just started to receive some federal funding, which has made it more of a 50-50 match, rather than the first 15 years, which was 100% private. So we had to put our dues in. We had to show our worth and show that our techniques are working.
That's amazing, and congratulations on that, because
Thank you.
that is praise indeed. I mean, when people trust you, and especially because you are dealing with a species that is critically endangered. I mean, they were pretty much written off back in the 70s, and that they trust you. Like, each condor is worth so much to this planet, just each one, that you really have like the most valuable thing right in your hands to protect, to set free, to give them a chance, the best chance. You know, you're working with the locals about changing out their ammunition so we don't have lead poisoning, because, you know, they're scavengers and they're picking up everything. So that means they're picking up the lead. So, I mean, doing that, kudos to you guys on that, and your team. And I'm really proud of you. That's amazing. I love organizations that are doing it out there. So with the fire, what happened to Ventana? Did you lose a research center? Did you lose equipment? Like, what do you want us to be aware of where you guys need help right now?
Yeah. So in addition to the loss of condor lives and just this overall need to get back to restoring and releasing, we have a group going out this month, actually, in San Simeon, California. So we're not skipping a beat in terms of releasing new condors to the wild, but our infrastructure at the Big Sur Sanctuary was a complete loss and more. And I say that because not only did we lose the research facility, we lost the condor release facility, but the road is so damaged that we haven't even cleared the road entirely, because there's just been so much work to do, and huge ponderosa pine trees that have fallen over onto the road. And so we just have a lot of cleanup to do. We're in the phase now of putting together an architect and envisioning what the rebuild is going to look like. We set a goal of raising $500,000, and we're well on our way, but we do still need some help to be able to finish that rebuilding effort. So those are the two things that we're doing. We need the infrastructure rebuilt, but we also need to continue our day-to-day work too, because after all, we just had about a 10% drop in the population overnight,
which is catastrophic with these numbers. That's catastrophic. So again, so your goal is 500,000. You're on your way. Now, let me ask you this. So the research center, is that where you have your office, or like, was it just strictly a scientific setup, or like, what was there? Are you going to have an office building with more, fireproof office building now with research, or like, what are you guys shooting for?
Yeah, we are going to harden it to a certain extent. I mean, structures in those remote locations are very hard to protect. And if it's a very intense fire, there's probably nothing you can do. But there is a lot we can do to minimize that threat of having a wildfire destroy the facilities again, including hardening, greater defensible space, things like that. But we did have a sprinkler system. We did have defensible space. It's a very tough place. So we're going to do our best to make the next structure last much longer. But it's really for the field staff. It's where the internet stream would go through. so that we can remotely monitor the flock, and also then, of course, upload data. And they could be in the field monitoring the flock, and at the same time be entering data and contributing in that way at the same time. So it's just a very important piece to the puzzle.
So until that facility is built and you get the necessary equipment, what are you guys doing in the meantime to fill the gap, to get from point A to point B, to keep what your mission statement is, moving forward? What are you guys doing in the interim?
Well, mostly we're shifting the effort to San Simeon. Thankfully, we do have the two properties, and the San Simeon release site is just about 50, I think it's between 50 and 60 miles south of Big Sur. So we're going to be releasing a group of 7 condors from there, all between now and Christmas. And there might even be a chance to receive a few more, in which case we will gladly get those back out there. Keep in mind, it's not just a one-for-one trade. From a population standpoint, if you trade a 24-year-old male, which unfortunately is the case of Aniko's father that presumably died in the fire, that is not at all, biologically speaking, the same thing as a 1-year-old condor that's not even, figured out how to survive in the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Don't worry. Hey, you're running a foundation. Come on, it's okay.
I thought I'd put "Do Not Disturb" on there.
That's what live, podcasting and Facebook is all about. It's real life, real people doing amazing things. So they want to talk. You apparently are very popular right now. So okay, well, so that's amazing. So what was the name of the website where people could see like Aniko and view what you guys are doing, like live stream? Like what was that again?
Yeah, it's what's on the screen here. So go to ventanaws.org. Yep. And we have a Condor Cam page. We also have a whole page dedicated to releases. We actually give each condor that we release a name and a bio, because these birds have very unique personalities. And so there's all kinds of interesting tools like that on the website to help you identify the birds and stay connected with those birds over the long haul.
Yeah, because we want to do the same thing. When I was supposed to be over in Zambia this summer, COVID had different ideas. But when I go over with some other Nasefu teammates next summer, we definitely want to be doing the cams, because there is a story, there's a connection between people and animals. And I read how Aniko, everybody was losing their mind, worried about Aniko, because they saw this baby hatch and grow up, and it's like your own child. I mean, you're panicked, you feel helpless, and you want to know what's happened to your favorite baby condor. So that's great, because I really want to get the right field cameras there, because we're situated on the South Walanga River. We're in South Walanga National Park. So there's a lot of stuff going on. We have to be really careful, though, because of poaching, that we can't let people know where we are and certain things, because people are like, just take cameras. Poachers are really creative, and they hack into systems, and they're like, oh, those are the coordinates. Oh, that's where that herd of elephants was. So it's a different deal when you're dealing with high poaching activity. Mm-hmm. And so, and especially when it comes to the rhino, that's a military operation. That is a whole different beast than just even protecting elephants. Rhinos, like literally, this is like Rangers and the SEAL team and, the special ops all combined. That's how intense it is with poaching, and how it, keeping information out of the public eye. So that's great. So that's good, because I want to check out and watch your condors grow. And can people see the launches of your condors when it happens on those things?
Well, we hope to. I can't promise it at this point, but we are working toward having a live stream so that viewers can watch. If it doesn't happen this go around, we'll try to get it for next time. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, what I ask all the conservationists that I've had on, how do you think we're doing in 2020 versus 10 years ago? Are things improving? Are things getting worse? Where do you see conservation overall in your field? And how's the planet doing, in your opinion?
I think if I reflect back just on the last 10 years, I'd probably have to give the report card of a C. We're kind of flat. I don't feel like we've made much progress or lost much ground, except for maybe on this climate change front. But if we step back further, though, I mean, I'm 50. I was born right around the time of the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, the Noise Reduction Act. A lot of these really, really important environmental acts that were just started right at the time of my birth, essentially. And so I kind of look at it that way. Whereas, the starting point was Rachel Carson's, Silent Spring, and just huge numbers of birds lost, species almost extinct, the peregrine falcon incredibly low, bald eagle, and many, many other species. And so from a bird perspective, now maybe this isn't true for mammals or other groups, but just looking at some of these bird species that have been worked on, the peregrine falcon is completely recovered. The bald eagle is completely recovered. I think we're making great progress on the condor, and that's despite all this other stuff that's going on around us, and despite the loosening of regulations and changing of climate change and so forth. So I'm kind of both optimistic and concerned about the overall big picture at the same time. But the last 10 years, I don't know. I don't feel like there's really been much to really comment on.
Well, I
hope there's more progress in the next 10.
I agree. I something I talk to my co-founder Victory Wallace about all the time is, I said, with NSEFWA, we're 5 years old. We're not big pros like Ventana. We're not the big guys like Ventana yet, but we're working on it. But I said, if I look at the big picture of conservation and what is happening with the mass extinction going on around the world, I will be paralyzed in grief. I will get nothing done because I'll be so grief stricken, because I take it all so personally. I'm so empathetic with wildlife. If I take my eyes off the ground and look up at the big picture, it overwhelms me. So I just think, okay, what I can do is I can fix my area, start there, get it the best I can get it, and our team can get it. And I'm happy to say we've dropped poaching 70% in our area on a budget of about $5, literally. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of that. And we want to expand beyond our borders. But I have to keep looking down, because it's too much. I'll get nothing done just because I'll be on the floor in a ball crying my eyes out over everything. I mean, everything is, there's bad news every single day. So I was just wondering, a veteran conservationist like you, is that how you kind of tackle it? And you just like, okay, I'm just minding my own business here, saving the condor, you guys, your own thing. Like, where do you fit in that?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Co. I think if I tried to, if I let my empathy get away from me beyond my reach, it can feel very overwhelming. And then I don't feel like I'm being as effective on my core, purpose. And so I think that's all you really can do. The world's too big. There's too many problems. There's too many species. But what we can hope for is that our work will inspire others, and that, we don't have to be at all places at once, because not only is that futile, but we're much better off encouraging others to take on projects like this also. And it's not so much competition as much as we need to all lift each other up, and collaborate, work with private, government, industry, at all stakeholders and figure out solutions, because we're all on this planet together. And I know that sounds cliche, but it really is true. And it's something worth striving for. Kind of one species at a time is how I sort of look at it, because otherwise, like you said, it's just too overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. And so, like you hit again, the mantra of Coexist, this podcast is lifting other great organizations. We are all in this together. And if we can share ideas, and I'm always writing down things that people are doing. I'm like, by the way, I'm stealing your idea because I'm going to apply it in my field, and you take my ideas and apply it over there. Because if we all work together, we can really get a lot done. And for anybody who's listening, who is thinking about maybe starting a foundation or joining a foundation, learn from people who have made mistakes. They learn from their successes and how they do it, and also the state of mind. And that's why I asked you, like, are you the big overall person, or do you keep your head low and just keep doing your job? And it seems like we're the same. We're cut from the same cloth on that one. So let me ask you then, if somebody wanted to get involved with Ventana, how do they go about it? Are you looking for people just to volunteer for events, to join? Like, how does somebody get involved?
Yeah, to be honest, because our work is so remote, and you're out there in 4-wheel drive vehicles, and sometimes dangerous situations, and climbing up into redwood trees, and it's not the most conducive in terms of volunteer work. We have been creative and found ways to involve volunteers in certain ways, whether it's photography or other specialized things that we couldn't do on our own. But really, the best way to be involved, whether you contribute or not, is just get involved and start watching our chats. We have monthly chats that we do, getting on the email list and hearing about things that are going on. We're really good about informing our supporters about everything that's going on, good news, bad news, how we're dealing with it, what the future looks like, and things like that. And that's the best way that we can offer people to be engaged. And of course, we do hope that they contribute as well. But that's really, being so remote as it is, that's why we create opportunities with the cameras and the Zoom chats and other engagement opportunities.
Yeah, I think I'm over Zoom. I think everybody in the world is over Zoom. I'm hearing about the Zoom fatigue. I'm like, I get it. I totally get it. So,
but that's all we have right now. And people love them. We had 309 people on our last chat. So.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. So for the average Californian, what can they do in their own life to help, especially like you were talking about with the birds? I mean, with condors, with eagles, what can they change? What small change in their life can they do to help your mission in getting these animals back to safe numbers and stable, and so we don't have to worry about them anymore? What, other than the ammunition, which again, I'm speaking with Kelly Sorenson of Ventana Wildlife Society, and towards the beginning of the show, we were talking about ammunition. We have got to get away from lead ammunition, period. So what, other than the ammunition, what else can you share with people, that they can do?
One simple thing we like to tell people about is just be really careful about trash, even small pieces of trash, what we call micro trash, are found to impact wildlife across the landscape. It's not a huge problem for condors, but we have had some condor chicks impacted by trash. The parents get confused. They think they're bringing back calcium in the form of bone or shell, but then sometimes they bring back a piece of PVC pipe, and it looks awfully similar, but it's not the same thing. And chicks, when they're real young, they don't have the ability to get that out of their system. And so we in fact, in one example, we had a condor chick die from trash, a real young chick that died from ingesting trash. So, it's been seen in a lot of other species across the globe. And you might not think that little cigarette butt or that bottle cap or, that one little tiny piece would be a big deal. You barely see it, right? But those are the little pieces, those little micro trash items that can be pretty devastating to wildlife. So, that's something that people can do. And as far as, well, you already beat me to the ammo, that's the best thing people can do is to switch. But I realize that's a small percentage of the population.
I mean,
so
is copper, I'm sorry to cut you off. Sorry with the delay. Is copper ammunition available to buy normally, or is this a special thing? Like, can we talk to the ammo people and say, hey, can you offer copper bullets at a comparable price to steer people into that direction? Is this something feasible, or I don't know?
Yeah. So in California, it went statewide that when taking animals, it's required that you use non-lead ammunition. And that only was fully phased in July of 2019. So it's only been a little over a year that the market has had to react to this statewide prohibition. Now, again, it's a prohibition on the use. This is not a prohibition on the sale. So people can still buy lead ammunition. They can still use it for target shooting. They can still use it for home protection. Second Amendment right. So the market's a little slow to respond. And in some calibers, you just simply cannot find a non-lead replacement. And that's particularly true for these smaller calibers, such as .22, that are often used for ground squirrel management and things like that, which is definitely a source of exposure in condors and other wildlife, including eagles. So, again, sorry to harp on that, but that's a biggie.
Yeah.
Whether it's at the market level or the user level, that's our top priority.
Well, that's good to know. And you know what, my brother-in-law, he does target shooting. He's an ex police officer, so he does target shooting and all that stuff. So he belongs to gun clubs, and they go skeet shoot and stuff like that. I'm going to have a talk with them, and I'm going to say, hey, for your friends who do shoot, this is what you need to know. And, the impact of lead on certain species, if you go travel to California for a meet or something like that, be very aware. It's just spreading awareness of what people can do. It's the small things that can have huge impact.
Well, and if I could, just one more thing on that note. I find that hunters and ranchers are very proud, and they should be, because they have the most beautiful habitat out there. And, really, we're not asking them to do anything different in terms of their land or certainly their ideals or anything along those lines. Is just simply an encouragement to switch to copper ammunition. And we find that when people are put more in the driver's seat to make that change, and it's because it's their own tradition that they're preserving, which I think it is, that there's more buy-in, rather than, hey, you need to make this switch and here's why, because people they're not going to hear that as they're not going to be as receptive if it's coming at them in that way.
Really valid point, a good point, especially with Second Amendment rights and all that stuff. Like, don't tell me what to do. I'm just offering a suggestion, and here's why. Do with it what you will. It's your choice. But that's a good idea, and that's a good thing, because a lot of people don't like to have their head bashed in over things, being told to do it one way, because they'll just resist. That's just the nature of a lot of people. So that's awesome. Good, really good idea right there. Well, gosh, Kelly, this hour has flown by, pardon the pun. This has been fascinating. I've learned so much. I'm sure our viewers and listeners here have learned so much. Again, if you'd like to support Kelly and his team with all the amazing work they're doing with the California Condor, that once numbered 22 and now are over 500. Some have perished. We've lost 10% in the California fires, the Dolan Fire. You can go to Ventana, VentanaWS.org. That's Ventana Wildlife Society.org, and support the great work that they're doing. Maybe they'll get their cameras up for viewing for all your favorite condors and the great work. And they're trying to raise $500,000 because they're in the sanctuary. Their research building was destroyed, other equipment, cameras, and all that, not to mention the condors. So, Kelly, you're an inspiration, and I know somebody is listening or watching this Coexist podcast, and they're going to go, that's what I want to do. That's who I want to help, and I want to be a conservationist too. You're amazing. I'm just, wow. I'm so glad we got it worked out. I wanted to get it closer to the fire, but God has different plans, and we got you on here. So best of luck. Will you please stay in touch with me, and please let me know what else we can do to help you and support you and your amazing work. And we're on your team. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. I really love the theme of your show, Coexist. So it's been an honor to be included. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I hope to have you back. Let's have you back in a few months, see how the sanctuaries, did you meet your goal? Did we get your building back up? Where are you with the condors? Because I know a lot of people in California really care about the condor, and we'll be rooting you on.
Sounds good.
Keep fighting that good fight, Mr. Kelly. We love you.
Thank you for the work you're doing in Africa too.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. It's my pleasure. All right. And that is another edition of Coexist. My special guest, Kelly Sorenson on IQ Podcast. If you want to contact me, you can email me at coe@nsefu, NSEFU.org. You can reach out to Kelly if you've got any questions. I'm sure he's got a phone. He's been putting people on hold all during the show, but we'd love to help you if you've got any suggestions for a great guest with a great foundation that needs some support. I'm here for you. That's what it's all about. So have a great one, Kelly. Good luck up there, and we're rooting for you.
Thank you.
Bye.